What does writing, storytelling, creativity mean to me? As a kid, I was frequently told I'm in my own world, when my eyes glazed over and I was using my imagination. For me, writing and storytelling are my way of allowing others to enter those worlds. My stories and my music are the keys that unlock the gates and take down the barriers to my mind. They allow me to express myself and say what I want to say, but, stuff that is tough for me to say in normal conversation. Writing, storytelling, and creativity are the bedrock of my life, as I truly believe you learn more about me as a person through my works. My imagination takes me to all sorts of worlds and universes, from history to mythology to fantasy to absolute nonsense. By reading and listening to my stories, my audience is able to join me on a journey into my mind. And my favorite aspect of it is that there are so many ways to tell stories. Storytelling in text, in animation and live action, films and stuff, in music, in poetry, and so much more. All of these mediums have been conduits through which I've been able to tell stories and express the thoughts and emotions I have in the most imaginative and fantastical way that suits me. Yeah, that's what writing is to me. That's what storytelling is to me. That's what creativity is to me. It's people getting to know me.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Closet Writer Chronicles. I'm your host Sangeeta, aka the Moody Marshmallow. You just heard our guest for today, Saahil Bhargava. Saahil is a singer, songwriter, writer, and animation producer. His debut EP titled Ronin was released in August 2021, while his single Kohima was nominated for several film festivals, including the LA Shorts International Film Festival. He is also the creative producer on the upcoming Young Captain Nemo franchise, with more animated and live-action projects to be announced soon. Today, I'll be chatting with him about his journey with animation and music. So hey Sahil, welcome to the Closet Writer Chronicles. It's so good to have you here, finally, after so much of back and forth with dates.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure to be here.
So I think just kind of diving right into like the main questions I have. So first off, and I think the most obvious one is, how did you get into writing? And, when did you kind of realize that writing and storytelling was something you wanted to pursue professionally?
Oh, professionally? Well, I got into writing as a kid. I was, I had a pretty crazy imagination, and I was always telling stories and creating like scenarios when we were on the playground playing like Justice League and stuff. And so I was always a pretty creative kid. In terms of getting into writing professionally, it kind of happened right after college when I was, trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and I started writing for game companies and stuff just as a side hustle. And eventually, I
Okay.
started to realize how much I liked telling stories from a creative and like conceptual standpoint. And so that's how I got into writing, and eventually it led me to what I'm doing now, which is doing a lot of writing and producing for animation. But the long journey just really started from me loving watching stuff and listening to stuff. And it does not hurt that my mom and dad are very creative as well, and my mom is a writer
Oh,
too.
oh wow.
So
Okay.
a lot of that I kind of just got from learning from them.
Oh, okay. That's amazing. I had no idea. That's brilliant. But then, how did you get into animation? Because I would assume,
Mm-hmm.
especially because you're South Asian and you're Indian, I would assume that's
Mm-hmm.
not exactly one of the first career choices that comes to any Indian or South Asian kid while growing up. Like, first of all, I think to get into a creative profession and then be like, oh, I want to be an animation writer, which is again fairly
Mm-hmm.
niche
Mm-hmm.
if you look at it from a South Asian lens, I guess.
Yeah.
So how did you get into animation, and what are some of your favorite, anime or animated content that
Sure. Sure.
inspired
Yeah.
you?
Well, I do want to preface this by saying that there is plenty of excellent animation and animation writers coming out of India now, and it's
Mm.
I think over the next few years we'll start to see the benefits of that when more and more exciting content comes out of India. Hopefully, some of which is from my stuff as well. Um, but in terms of getting into animation, I have been a huge anime and just animation in general fan since I was a kid. Going way back to like the golden age of Nickelodeon with like Hey Arnold and stuff, or Batman
Mm.
the animated series, or even like a little bit later Avatar: The Last Airbender, and all of the anime that I watched as a kid as well. It's always been a big part of my life, and how I got into animation was when I was right out of college, around the same time that I was starting to write professionally.
Right.
I started this company with a few other people that was primarily doing kids content for like preschool,
Okay.
and my main kind of pet project in amongst that group was a nursery rhyme channel, which is
Oh,
still on YouTube. It's called
okay.
Intunes. If anyone's ever interested in checking out me doing weird voices and stuff like that
Okay,
for
wow.
nursery rhymes. Um, but like that was my first foray into it, and I had no experience in animation prior to that. So it was a steep learning curve, but it was such a good way to get started because it was musical content, which is my bread and butter. And it was an easier way to transition into it. But I always kind of thought that at some point in my life, if I did pursue creative stuff, animation would be part of it, just because of how big and how much influence it's been on my life. I can probably list more in my top 10 favorite movies. I imagine at least half, if not more than half, would be animated.
Yeah,
And
like which
so,
ones, if I may ask?
oh my God. I mean, as a kid, there was a lot of like Lion King was a big one for me
Yeah,
as a kid for sure.
love that.
But I also really, I, I mean, I'm trying to think of ones that I watched as a kid that would have captured my imagination that not so much now. The Disney ones for sure, but there were also a couple of anime ones. Like I watched Akira when I was pretty young, actually, and that was pretty
Okay.
dope. A lot of the Naruto movies were really
Mm-hmm.
good, even though some of them weren't canon. But I really started getting into like animated movies once I got older, and you've got stuff in the West over here, like Into the Spider-Verse and Kubo, which are
Mm.
two that stick out to me as well. Kubo and the Two Strings; those are fantastic. But then there's also all sorts of anime movies like Tokyo Godfathers or Paprika by Satoshi Kon are really good.
Okay.
Anything by Makato Shinkai, like he did Your Name, which is very, very big. And then Weathering with You was actually visually very cool as well. Um, and even stuff like the Demon Slayer movie recently was visually stunning, but anything in Demon Slayer is visually stunning. They have just a really good anime style or animation style. But yeah, as far as movies go, like I have so many different animated movies that have influenced me, and then as shows as well. You asked me like what animation shows are my favorites. I mean,
Yeah.
it's hard not to look at Avatar: The Last Airbender, Full
Yeah.
Metal Alchemist,
Oh my God, yes.
Steins Gate is a big one for me. I love Steins Gate for their writing
Okay.
and just everything. I mean, the acting both in the English and the Japanese is stellar. Recently, Arcane, I was surprised because I've never played League of Legends and have no plans to, but the show is brilliant. I was shocked at how good it was. I didn't expect it, and the music is also stellar. So, I guess those are a couple of them, but I could go on and on. I mean, I have barely scratched the surface on
Yeah.
what anime
No,
I watch
I
on a
know
daily
you
basis.
can. I know
Yeah.
you can, which is why I kind of asked this question because I think I got into watching anime, I think when I was like 11 or 12. And
Oh
I
shit. Yeah,
think, yeah, I think there was Animax that came out at that time in India. And I
Yo,
just,
Animax was amazing. I watched
yeah,
everything from I think
same.
Cardcaptors on there, and I used
Yes.
to
Oh
watch
my God.
Cardcaptors on there.
Yes.
I never understood that show. I never because the thing about Animax is it was daily episodes,
Yeah.
and I would miss so many of them. But
Okay.
Yu Yu Hakusho, such a good
Yes.
show.
Oh my God. I
That was
love
on
that show.
Animax.
I love that
So
show.
good.
Oh my
Spirit
God.
Detective, right? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Even
Yes.
Tantei Gakuen Q, which is Detective
I
School
didn't
Q.
watch that. I
So
didn't
that
watch
was the
that one.
first animated show I watched, and
Oh,
they were
nice.
doing weekly reruns on a weekend or something. And I just sat and I
Uh-huh.
binged for like 2 hours, and I was like, "Oh my God, I love this show," and that's how I got
Yeah.
into.
I think
But yeah,
was Full Metal Alchemist the original, not Brotherhood, which is
not
my
Brotherhood.
Brotherhood is probably my favorite, but I think the original
Yeah,
Full Metal Alchemist was on Animax too, and that was
yes,
my
that's
first
true.
introduction to the brilliant character that is Edward Elric. Like
Yeah.
I
Oh
could
my
watch him all
God.
day. He's so
Yeah.
much fun.
Yeah. That's one
Um,
of my all-time favorites as well. I can watch that show n number of times for sure.
oh, Avatar and Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood are two of the shows where like I will cycle them in and out like every alternate year. I just have to experience it and see what else I'm getting from it. Yeah, there are a few shows that do that for me. I think Jujutsu Kaisen might be turning into that. It just depends on how long it goes for. But every now and then, I need to go back to 10-year-old Sahil watching just like action shonen anime or like something like that. Like, Teen Titans is
Yeah.
another one. I don't know if you
Yeah.
watched
Oh,
that.
yes, I did.
2003 Teen Titans.
Yeah.
That show was brilliant. Um,
Yeah. But no, it's amazing. I mean, the fact that you kind of now get to do something you grew up loving, right? And kind of turning it
Absolutely.
into a profession.
Yeah.
I think that's incredible because honestly, how many people get to, say that, I'm doing what I grew up loved, experiencing in a way.
It's amazing, and it really does change my perspective on both what I like to do for work and what I like to do for fun.
Mm,
It has an impact on both facets of my life because effectively I've combined both facets of my life.
exactly. Yeah.
My work is my fun, but it
Mm,
still is work, and there's still a lot of the difficulties that come with work. And I mean, anyone who's like looked at behind the scenes stuff on animation would probably
mm,
see the amount of time and steps and the amount of people that you really need to get something
true.
looking really getting something looking good, let alone like into the Spider-Verse level, like
Mm,
legendary.
yeah.
And it's it's really changed a lot about how I think of animation now, even when I'm watching things, because I can appreciate something that is well written even if it doesn't look good, and vice versa,
Mm,
because
mm,
I can tell like where people are putting in certain kinds of work and stuff. And I know that my eyes like design wise are not as strong as they are probably, or my I guess my senses are from figuring out story standpoint and like thinking about what choices actors are making, because that's more my bread and butter,
mm,
than like I don't ever do the drawing and animation or anything like that. But I can start to tell like when people are using certain kinds of 3D backgrounds and stuff like that, how much time went into 2 seconds of animation, let alone 20 minutes or 40 minutes or 120 and so on.
yeah. No, that's amazing. And which kind of brings me, to the next part because I know so when I was doing a little bit of like research about you, I heard that so I found out that apparently you have a certain degree of color blindness. I'm not sure to
Yep.
what degree. So does that affect your job in animation in any sense, or is it fine because you just stick to writing? How does that?
Oh, I mean, these days as a producer, I don't just stick to writing anymore. So the answer is 100% yes, it does affect my job.
Okay.
Well, like there have been times like the one of the first things I did, the Nursery Rhyme channel had a turtle that was green, and I would
Okay.
keep asking people, "Why is the turtle orange?" It was not. It
Oh.
was green. It was green the entire
Oh.
time, and I had
Oh,
like an
damn.
entire set of notes I gave, like, "Why is the turtle orange?" And then like one of the people I was working with was just like, "Are you colorblind?" I was like, "Actually, yes, I am." And they're like, "That makes sense." Um, no, it doesn't affect me much anymore because I mean, everyone who's worked with me for all of 10 seconds will figure it out. It's not very hard.
Okay.
But and like the degree to my color blindness, it's not like I'm incapable of seeing the colors completely. It's color deficiency. So like my green receptors or whatever it is are weaker or lesser or something. And so I have
Okay.
trouble with red, green, and then other combinations of colors. But it really
Okay.
just depends on like 2D versus 3D. Like in 3D, I think colors look a little bit different to me than they do in 2D. 2D, I have trouble telling them
Okay.
apart. Yeah, so it doesn't affect my ability to drive unless you ask me to point out the color of a car on the road.
Okay.
But I mean, in animation, like I'm usually not the lead designer or like in charge of coloring things, so it doesn't affect
Hmm.
me too much in a like crucial way. But certainly, like when I'm giving notes, I will put like
Right.
a little disclaimer at the top that person giving notes can does not it does not have the ability to see the colors correctly. Please advise. Um,
Okay.
yeah.
No, that's interesting because I found that really fascinating. I was like, wait, how does that work? Because if you're working in animation and if
Hmm.
you are, but okay, that's interesting to hear. But again, coming to animation as a profession, and because
Hmm.
we're South Asian, what are some misconceptions you think people have about animated content or even just
Hmm.
professionals working in animation? And have you experienced anything firsthand?
Yeah, I mean, for starters, this is not limited to South Asia. A lot of people still have this misconception that animation or cartoons, as it used to be called, or as it
Yeah.
is still called, they just assume it's for kids. And for
Hmm.
starters, I just have to point them to like any anime ever and be like, yeah, that's not true.
Hmm.
But beyond that, like even, well, Arcane's a good example. I'm trying to think of other examples here in the West that are like adult animated. Invincible is another one that's definitely not for
Hmm.
kids. That was the Amazon show.
Hmm.
Animation is a medium, not a genre. Just like
Hmm.
anime, a lot of people say
Right.
that, oh, it's anime, like Japanese, like it's
Yeah.
like that stuff. I'm like, no, like even within anime, there's like 100 different genres. I can point
Yeah.
out slice of life, rom com, action, horror, like there's anything in anime, and it's the same. I think this is a common misconception that I've noticed across the board, like not just in South Asia.
Yeah.
And it's something that I think in the next decade is going to completely get flipped. Stuff like Into the Spider-Verse has shown that animation can be as good, if not better, than any live action thing out there.
Hmm.
Arcane has shown that animation can be as big in scale as Game of Thrones. You
Right.
know, the next decade is going to be a big boom for adult animation, for horror animation, and all sorts of stuff. And you can see it actually on the industry side, what's getting bought right now, what's getting announced by like the big streaming studios and the big movie studios. It's it's actually a really good time to be in animation for me because my job, official job, is
Yeah.
I run an animation studio that like my division of it focuses on teen and adult animation. And so
Right.
yeah, that's definitely one of the big things that I'm always trying to tell people, that animation can do anything. In fact, half the Marvel movies are animated now, like the live action Marvel
Yeah.
movies. Like
Pretty
Iron
much.
Man, unless it's like Robert Downey Jr. on screen, it's just an animated character. Or
Yeah.
like some kind
Fair
of
enough.
rig that's then been animated. Even Spider-Man, his eyes are animated now.
Hmm.
Like that's how you get the new Spider-Man, Tom Holland Spider-Man. His eyes do the thing that
Yeah.
it does in the comics where like it reacts to stuff. They learned that I think from Deadpool, or they both were doing it at the same time. But like,
Oh, okay.
animation has gotten so advanced now that it can look real, to the
Hmm.
point where video games, Horizon Zero Dawn is a great example of a visually stunning video game where, my mom will sit down and be like, this is as beautiful as any like live action movie I've seen.
Yeah.
Um, and then she'll watch me murder a dinosaur robot and be like, I don't want to
Oh
watch
my
you play
God.
this game anymore. Horizon's a
Yes.
great game. It's it's
Yeah.
it's incredible. I highly recommend it.
Yeah. We're not
Um,
promoting violence on this show, guys, but sure.
Well, yeah, you're right. You're talking to me about like what I write, and like so much of it does go into the action space. But yeah, you are correct. Do not murder dinosaur robots. They have feelings too.
Yes, for
Um,
sure. But no, yeah, no, I do agree because there's so many people even I meet and immediately when I say that, oh yeah, I enjoy like watching anime or,
mhm,
I've read manga or something like that. They're like, oh, but
mhm,
isn't
mhm.
that for kids? And then I'm like, no, you should go watch like a Tokyo Ghoul or Death Note or
Ooh,
something.
Tokyo Ghoul's a good shout. Yeah, Death
And
Note is definitely not for kids. Yeah, that's a good shout.
yeah, yeah. So I'm like, you should definitely go watch those and then get back to me on what you think. But
Dude, that just the first episode of Tokyo Ghoul alone with
it's
you've
very
seen it, right?
depressing. Yeah.
Well, with the whole thing with his date with Rise,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's I wouldn't show that to kids. Like there's a live action version of that
Yes, I know. I didn't watch
very
it. I didn't
well,
watch it.
most live action, like the ones that are made in Japan, I mean the ones made here are even worse, but like the ones made in Japan, like most of them are kind of iffy.
Hmm.
That specific sequence where like the date and then the whole like the tower, or what is it,
Hmm.
like the
The
construction thing,
building
it
collapsing.
was really well done. Like I was
Okay.
surprised. Like she
Okay.
didn't look terrible. That's the best way for me to put it.
Okay.
Like, and the acting was stellar. I was like, oh damn, like I believe
Okay.
Kaneki's terror and Rise's, well, whatever. I'm trying not to spoil Tokyo Ghoul. That's
Yeah.
the first episode.
Yeah.
Go.
I think there was a live action of Full Metal also, but I watched the trailer and I was like, I'm not
Don't
watching
don't
this.
watch that one. I did
Yeah.
watch that. It's like
Yeah.
the live action Attack on Titan. Like, don't do that to yourself.
Yeah. No, so not watching it. I will live with the animated version of
Oh
that
yeah,
show for
like the
sure.
physics in the animation are a lot easier to explain. I don't know how to explain the physics of the OMDs from Attack on Titan, or like
Oh my God.
transmutation in Full Metal. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
Full Metal tries to explain the physics, and it just does not. It just
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense.
But
But
yeah,
yeah.
fun watch nonetheless. So if
Oh, it's great. Yeah.
anyone's new to anime or animation, go check out all the shows we've
Well,
mentioned.
those are two great starter packs. Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood and Attack on Titan are great
Yeah,
intro to anime. Death
for
Note
sure.
2, I'd say, is another one.
I think Tokyo
Yeah.
Ghoul, I mean, if you're okay with a little bit of tragedy, but yeah,
I wouldn't say Tokyo Ghoul because the anime goes in a very weird direction, so you don't get the whole story the
that's
way that
also
the
true.
the manga does. Like
Yeah.
it's just not great.
Yeah. But it's still a great show. I mean, I don't know. I was like, this is really depressing, but I'm weirdly hooked to
Oh,
this show.
it's a really cool franchise in general, and
Yeah.
I love the concept of it because it's effectively like a vampire story, but in a modernized world without the kind of over flamboyance of vampires that you sometimes associate with that kind of
True.
you know monster species.
True.
And Tokyo Ghoul really unpacks a lot of that. Shinki is another vampire-ish story, which
Mm.
is very interesting. It's
Mm.
like a village with like vampires hunting the humans, but it
Okay.
very quickly humanizes the vampires too,
Yeah.
and demonizes the humans, and so it turns
Yeah.
into a little Attack on Titan-y.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I will check that out. Well, but even Fruits Basket is great if you want slice of life. That's also
Oh,
tragic, but
I mean, yeah,
it's
I can go on about slice of
yeah.
life anime too.
Yeah,
Like,
but
yeah.
anyway, moving on. We will never end with
Moving
this
on.
conversation.
Yeah, I told you,
Otherwise,
you've got to keep it ticking. I can
as
talk about this forever.
as you can see, both of us clearly seem to be very involved in
Hmm,
animation
hmm.
and anime. But yeah, moving on. So I think to the other part of your career, which is you're a songwriter. You compose music.
Yes. Hmm.
So how did music happen? What has that journey been like for you? I know you mentioned a story on other podcasts about you being a kid and performing
Yeah.
and realizing that you love this. But when did you
Yeah,
realize that
yeah.
this was something you again wanted to kind of professionally pursue?
Oh, see, unlike animation and writing, where I always liked them but didn't realize that I wanted to do it professionally until I was probably like 18, 19,
Okay.
music was like, actually, animation might have even been 21, but music was like 4. Like, I
Wow.
wanted to
Okay.
sing from the age of 4 professionally. Like,
Okay. Wow.
that was like it's my ride or die kind of thing, you know? And so I started singing when I was around that age, and like yeah,
Okay.
you mentioned the story of how I was like nearly expelled the day before, and then the next day I had this big concert where I sang a song a cappella, and the same principal who told me I should be expelled gave me a standing ovation. You know,
Yeah. Which is incredible.
it was like an eye-opening moment, but I was already at that point I was already really into music. I just didn't have the professional like idea click in my brain till that moment. But yeah, no, I've been singing since I was like 3 or 4 years old. I used to sing musical theater, classical,
Hmm.
like both mostly Western classical, a little bit of Indian classical in school, but
Okay.
not much. Yeah,
Okay.
not enough that I can sing Indian classical convincingly now, and it's something that I think I want to learn again because you can learn so much from the technique that they use in Indian classical.
Okay. Yeah.
It's very technically demanding.
Hmm.
It's a very tough style of singing. You know,
For
the
sure.
general, without me getting into the specific, I'm
Hmm.
sure there's subgenres in Indian classical,
Yeah.
you know, but like whether you're singing rags or something else like
Hmm.
that, like it gets very, very demanding on the breath and the
Hmm.
voice. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I started off with Western classical and musical theater, quickly decided I wanted to sing rock. Thank you, Linkin Park and School of Rock.
Hmm.
Um, and then from there, you know, it just kept going. I learned jazz, I learned pop, I started working on like all sorts of different styles of singing, and it really shows in my voice because I have this kind of theatrical voice right now.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I'm hoping that I can do that professionally for the rest of my life. Like it's been, oh my God, what, 23 years or something now since I started
Wow.
singing, and you know, certainly like 20 years since I wanted to do it professionally. And there
Hmm.
have been up or downs. Like when I was in college, that was the closest I ever got to giving up on that dream. Um,
Okay.
yeah, and then I've had some like touch and go moments. Like right before the pandemic started, I recorded my original song Ronin. It's the only one I recorded before the pandemic. I think that and like Plug In Baby, and then a song Umbra, which is coming out on December 3rd. You get the scoop,
Okay.
I guess, now because I'm not supposed to say that, but it doesn't matter. You don't have to edit that out. It'll
I'm
be out
sure
by the time.
your
Yeah.
agent and manager will be okay with this, hopefully.
No, they're okay with it. Yeah, because like we're announcing it literally 3 days from now, so you'll be fine unless you edit this real fast.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So, you know, those three I recorded before the pandemic. Everything was recorded after, but I remember that session. I was kind of thinking to myself, like, if Ronan in particular doesn't sound good, I'm done. You know, I don't
Okay.
think I'm going to sing anymore. And luckily enough, it sounded so good that I don't think I ever re recorded Ronan. I think we used
Oh,
the
okay.
same vocal takes from Feb 2020 when we released it in what, August 2021. Because it
Wow.
was
Okay.
so strong. And you could feel my fury and desperation in those recordings.
Hmm.
Because I
And
knew um, this was it. Like I had to get this right, otherwise I couldn't justify myself putting more time and effort into the
hmm.
music. And so, there have been moments in my life where I questioned it, but it's been my thing that I wanted to do since I was a kid. And I'm hoping that, I'm able to do it. I'm hoping I'll be able to. I'm very ambitious. I want to play at Wembley. I want to play at Madison Square. I want to play at
That's
MMRDA in
amazing.
Bombay if that's still a venue that is open. I don't know if it's still open anymore. I'd
Or
love to
Geo
play.
Garden.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'll play wherever. Actually, India is probably the first place I'll be able to go on tour because,
Hmm.
um, we recently did a bunch of live recordings in Bombay at
Hmm.
a studio over there. And so, like, I feel very comfortable being able to play shows over there and hopefully put together a band because, um, I mean, I want to go to, like, Northeast India and play Kohima there
Yeah. Oh
because
my
I feel
God.
like
Yeah.
they would love that. I'd love to play in Shillong. I'd love to play I mean, I don't know
Yeah.
if I can play in Kohima itself, but, like, I'd love to play shows over there too.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm very ambitious about my music, and I'm lucky enough that, as a nice little segue for you, my music and my animation and also my writing and acting stuff are all blending together in my style of songwriting and my style of composition.
Yeah.
It's allowing me to showcase all my skill sets with the fact that my music is so story driven and so cinematic.
Yeah. And I think the term you used for your music, I think just before we start recording, was cinematic rock, I believe.
Yeah, that's what I'm calling it right now until one or two. I don't think the cinematic aspect of my music will ever slip because that's just so up my alley.
Hmm.
I don't know for sure if I'll continue doing rock long term because I want to explore different styles of music. Not that I have any problems with
Definitely.
rock. Rock was where I got started. But cinematic rock is the best way I describe it to people when they ask me what's your music like because it's not alternative the more I think about it. It's not
Right.
I'm not trying to do progressive rock because that's I think a little too technical and I mean I can do progressive rock but it gets a little bit too into the you have to showcase
Right.
how good you can do stuff with instruments. I mean I want it to be something that is relatable to everyone, even people who don't listen to. I mean, they should, but they don't listen to Rush or Karnivool or stuff like that.
Hmm.
I want my music to be something that's anyone can listen to and anyone can relate to, and so cinematic rock sounds like a really cool idea. Like it sounds like a genre that should exist, but probably doesn't. And I googled it, not too
Okay.
many. Yeah, there aren't too many.
Oh,
So I would
okay.
be a pioneer if I get
Yeah,
big,
for
but
sure. You
fingers
already
crossed for
are.
that.
You already are. I mean, you heard it here first, cinematic rockers. Uh,
Mm-hmm. I'll take it.
but yeah, no, and I did listen to the EP, and I think one of the first things that definitely came to me is your songs are very well written because I think for me, like
Thank
as
you.
a listener, I think for me the first thing is always lyrics before melody.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I loved the songwriting that was on the EP. So kudos to you on that.
Yeah, I
And
really
yeah,
appreciate that.
I think you will find your space for sure
Mm-hmm.
because all the songs on the EP are still like they're very different and they've got their own messaging, which I think is amazing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, but how did the idea for Ronin come, the EP as a
The
whole?
EP.
Yeah, and like what is the story behind Ronin? How did it come to you, or like
Mm-hmm.
you decide like okay, maybe I should make something like this.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
how was the whole experience of kind of creating it, releasing it, and especially because it happened during a pandemic, so to speak. So
Right.
yeah.
Well, uh, I guess like the best way to say it is that Ronan, the EP, has one kind of unifying theme, and it's this idea of losing a crucial part of yourself, whether that's your
Mhm.
identity or your entity. Like in the song Wind, for example, the man knows he's going to die. Like the
Okay.
character, the protagonist of the song, he's been
Hmm.
infected by this virus that's going to take over his mind and leave him a
Right.
passenger in his own body. It's essentially, it's inspired by Last of Us, so it's like a zombie virus.
Okay.
Um, and he's slowly losing not just the fact that he's dying, but he is actually going to be kind of like sleep paralysis in his own body while the
Hmm.
infection takes over and turns him into one of those creatures.
Right.
And, Mama is about losing your own sense of identity, through oppression and through conformity. Ronin is about losing your identity in terms of like something you've built up and been your whole life and having a crisis of confidence and deciding you don't want to be that anymore. So what are you
Hmm.
now? In fact, I'm pretty sure there's a line in the song, "What am I now?"
Yeah.
Um, and then Kohima is about losing your life to a cause that you don't fully understand and just, desperately trying to cling and, go back to the way things were. But not making it out of that. You know, it's about the
Mm.
struggles of war, and it's, you know, it's a very anti-war song. And I say this is my tagline on Kohima: anti-war, pro-human. You know, like all of
Yeah.
the songs have this unifying idea of what it would be like to lose something of yourself. Because I think, certainly for me, but I would hope a lot of other. Well, actually, I hope not. But I would assume, expect. I'm trying to think of the right verb to use here. I would understand if a lot of people were feeling the same kind of feeling of like during the pandemic they feel like they're losing elements of themselves because they cannot
Right.
interact with people because they are losing crucial aspects of their life. And
Mm.
you know, I, when I write these songs, I actually start lyrics first on almost all of them. I think the
Okay.
only one where like the melody came before the lyrics was Wind, but even
Okay.
then like the concept came before the melody.
Okay.
um, I always start with lyrics because lyrics allow me to paint the entire picture from the ground up. You know,
Hmm.
with lyrics from a music standpoint, lyrics are syllables, and syllables give you rhythm and melody. And
Right.
from rhythm and melody, you get harmony, you get bass notes, which give you harmony, and so on. Like it allows
Hmm.
you to kind of, it allows you to paint the tapestry from the stencil, so to speak. I don't know
Right.
if I'm using that analogy correctly because I don't draw. Hopefully, um, but you know, the ideas and stuff like that allowed me to kind of tap into my acting brain as well. Because to do Ronin, the EP, I had to really feel a lot of empathy for the characters I was writing. You know,
Right.
I've never been a samurai in 1300s Japan. I have not been
Hmm.
to war. I have not been infected by a zombie virus. You
Hmm.
know, and I certainly am not, you know, a woman growing up in a oppressed and hostile civilization that is forcing me to conform for fear of death, you know? Like all
Right.
of those characters are characters that I had to build using a lot of empathy and a lot of understanding and relating to them. And that's why I hope that when my audiences listen to my songs and even just read my lyrics, which, you know, I posted them separately on Instagram because I wanted people who just wanted to read the lyrics to get that experience. I hope when
Right.
people read and listen to them, they are able to connect with it in their own unique way, you know? So
Yeah.
many people have sent me alternative, like, interpretations of Wind, of Mama, of Ronin, and I
Okay.
love that. You know, I think that's amazing. I'm not extremely precious about my interpretations as long as like someone's interpretation is not, you know, racist or sexist or something. Like
Yeah.
that's when I'd be like, nah, dude, you're just wrong. Um, but like, I love the fact that people can interpret my music and my writing in unique ways because my opinion is once the stuff is out there, it's allowed to go in different ways and be interpreted in different ways, you know?
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
in the conception, I try not to get too many interpretations because then it just leads to a jumble. But
Hmm.
once I release something, I want as many people to have ideas and thoughts on it as they can, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's one of the points of art, right? You kind of put it out to see like what other people think of what it is you've
Yeah, yeah.
created.
Otherwise,
And
why put it out? Like, you want to get other people's perspectives on it.
yeah, for sure.
I
And
mean, I
it's
guess you
always
could also
great.
just want to make money. That's another reason to put it out. It just occurred to me.
Oh, it's a
Um,
commercial business now,
yeah.
for sure.
Hmm.
But yeah, then that kind of, I mean, I don't know if this is something we can pivot to, but
Hmm.
because I know Kohima was nominated for the LA Shots, right? So then,
Yeah, yeah. Hmm.
when you get, that kind of recognition and accolade so early on, does that
Hmm.
kind of then influence what you're going to write or compose next? That, oh, because this did so well and this got
Uh,
this kind of recognition, does that somewhere affect what you're doing for future music?
Well, it certainly affects my agent, who's just like, "Hey, write more Kohimas," and I'm like, "Yeah, I'm trying, man." Um, I think to a certain extent, it does, where it emboldens me on in a lot of things. Like it emboldens me to continue doing more animated videos. Like I do have a couple of
Hmm.
live action videos that'll be coming out over the course of 2022.
Okay.
Um, just because I think I want to try different kinds of videos, but I also feel very comfortable and happy to do more animation videos because of the reaction I had, not just to Kohima, but to Ronin and Mama as well. You know,
Hmm.
and so I think, certainly from a songwriting standpoint, the fact that the songs are resonating well with people emboldens me a lot to try more interesting things because, like you mentioned, the songs do have their own kind of unique space and vibe. Even though there,
Yeah.
I think, is not just from a theme standpoint, but also from a songwriting standpoint, there are commonalities between all the songs. In fact, one or two of them share a bass line, which happened by accident now that I think about it. Um, but beyond that, I think that the fact that my songs are able to be received so well despite being so different means that people want to hear more different kinds of stories. You know, I've
Right.
got a song coming out that is very much like a horror video game inspired song, like straight up
Okay.
Lovecraftian. I've got a song coming out that's set in space. I've got another song coming out that's from the perspective of an animal. You know, like
Yeah.
all of these
Interesting.
songs are like very distinct and very different from each other from the conception standpoint. And given how I write my songs, that usually affects the entire ambiance and sound of the song.
Hmm.
But it still is my voice singing it, and it still has a lot of elements. Like I'm working with Keshav on some of my new songs as well, and he was the guy who did the production on three of the four songs. And I think technically he did the mixing and mastering on all four of the songs from
Okay.
Ronin EP. And he also did work on Overture, which was the intro track on Ronin.
Right.
Um, and he's working with me on some of the new songs as well. So you'll hear a lot of similarities, but each song sounds like it's a different world, and I really love that.
Hmm.
I love the fact that I don't feel like I'm trapped in the same song. You know, I'm not
Right.
writing about the same thing every single time. You
Right.
know, I had someone joke with me on another podcast I did that, yeah, you don't write any love songs, man. What's up with that? And I was just like, I mean, once I think of a good love story, I'll write the song. But right now, like, my interests are not even
Another
remotely there.
tragedy to write
Yeah.
about.
Oh, geez, man. I mean, I could write like an Orpheus song or something, and that'd be
Oh my
dope.
God.
But yeah, I feel like Orpheus has been tread on too much. I'd find a more obscure story, or just write one myself. Like
Yeah.
my goal, like my next EP or album, whatever it ends up being, will be kind of like Ronin, where they're all self-contained short stories. Maybe
Right.
one song will be a two-parter.
Okay.
Um, but other than that, like I'm keeping it self-contained because after that, I'm going straight for a concept album, which is one story,
Nice.
however many songs, whether it's like 4 songs or 8 songs or 12 songs or whatever, you know?
Okay.
And that allows me to flex my composing muscles as well because the music will have to like have little things here and there that call back to previous things or foreshadow like upcoming things in the album itself. And at the same time, as a singer, it allows me to show more variety in my voice because I'll be
Yeah.
singing different perspectives or different storylines and stuff. So I cannot wait for 2022, like, and all the stuff I'm going to be working on and putting out because it gets me even more ambitious.
Yeah, no, it's definitely sounds like an exciting time that's coming up for you, and
Mm-hmm.
I can't wait to hear all your future music for sure. Really looking forward to it. But yeah, I think sort of, because you spoke with the EP with Ronan, one of the things you mentioned was identity and like,
Mm-hmm.
losing parts of yourself and elements of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So, kind of shifting gears a little bit,
Sure.
I know you've kind of shifted around a lot while growing up, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep.
Because I believe you were in the States, then in the UK, then
Mm-hmm.
India, then again you moved back. So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and I always love asking this question to people who move around a lot, who are kind of like urban nomads in a way. But have you ever had, I guess, this feeling of, I don't know, being a third culture kid or I guess, quote unquote,
Oh yeah.
fitting into a place? And, what is your journey and experience been like with that?
Oh, I mean, I am a third culture kid, and like, I mean, I guess the loosest or basic definition of it for sure, and probably the most specific definition too. Like, I don't particularly identify with any specific nationality as much as I guess I'm an Indian American, for lack of a better term. But what does
Hmm.
that even mean anymore?
Yeah.
Like I grew up all over the place, and then I went to schools. Like I went to an international school for middle school and high school,
Hmm.
where it was so transient. You know, people were there for like 6 months and then they'd leave, or a year and then they'd leave, and so
Right.
I've gotten very used to the idea of change and I've become very adaptable. I might be moving soon, from where I'm living right now, and I'm
Okay.
starting to figure out the next step, and it just feels so normal for me. I'm
Hmm.
very used to that. And I think there are pros and cons to that because the pros are that I have a very open view and I have like a very like global mindset about how I think and live. But the cons are like I don't really know what I call home in the world. I don't have
Interesting.
like childhood friends in like one location or stuff. Like
Hmm.
whenever I talk to people who are like, "Oh yeah, we went to elementary school together and then we went to high school together and stuff," and I'm just like, "Yeah, dude, I don't even think I had a single person in common in any of those situations. Like my middle school was different from my high school in some regards, but there were some
Yeah.
similarities. But for the most part, like my life, it's been shifting around a lot, and so I'm always a little jealous of people who've been friends for like 23 years or something like that. I'm like, damn, dude, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's long.
But
Yeah.
on the flip side, like I have a lot of friends who I'll be friends with for 2 years, and then like life will happen, and we'll like go to different countries and stuff, and then we'll reconnect, and it'll be just great, you
Yeah, it's
know.
amazing. Yeah.
So I guess there are pros and cons to everything, and I certainly think the way the world should be evolving. I don't know if it'll actually go that way given the way things are. Um,
Yeah.
the globalization of the world is a really good thing because people can go and explore different cultures and figure out, things about other places in the world that they like and things about other places in the world that they want to aspire to be like. So I think that's a good thing. I want to go live in all sorts of places.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
the goal, I was joking with my dad, the goal is to be, what is it, pentacoastal? Have like a home base
Okay.
in LA, New York, London, India, and then Japan or something
Oh
like
my
that.
God. Oh,
Just
you
like,
should totally get a base in Japan. It's a
oh man,
beautiful
I'd
country.
love to. I went to. I mean, Ronin was actually inspired when I went to
Right.
Osaka in Japan, right?
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, Japan was like. I went on that trip in like April 2019, and I'm still thinking about going back. It's just
Oh,
there's
wow.
so much more that I want to go
That's
and do there.
amazing.
I was there for like 10, 12 days or something, and I still feel like I could have done more.
That's
Um,
amazing.
and there's so many other countries that I've gotten, lucky to visit. I was just recently in Nepal, and like,
Hmm.
that was wonderful. And I'm hoping to go to a lot of different places. But, a couple of the places I want to go to now are places where I'm writing about folklore from there or like mythology from there. And I want to go visit those places and actually go and be the history nerd that I am.
Yeah. Oh,
And
that's
like
amazing.
actually, like, I'd love to go, like, I've been to Egypt and seen the pyramids, but I'd love to go back to Egypt and like really focus in on some of their mythology and stuff because Egyptian
Right.
mythology is fascinating,
Yeah, for
you
sure it
know?
is. Yeah. No, that's amazing. And yeah, I think just given with the pandemic travel, I think is something a lot of people are missing for sure.
It's
Um,
opening up. Fingers crossed. 2022.
yes,
We can go wherever we
yes,
want.
for sure. Yes, fingers crossed for sure. But yeah, because when you were talking about like, there are people you see who've been in one place for so long and who have friends from kindergarten. I was like, yeah, I'm that person. I
Uh
know
huh.
what you mean. But yeah, which is why I love having this conversation with people who I know who move around a lot because I think the perspectives are so different and it's always interesting to kind of exchange and see, where each person's coming from. So yeah, it was really fascinating to hear about your story. Um, so yeah, now we're kind of coming towards the end of this interview.
Sure.
And we always end with these last two questions. So the
All right.
first one is, what are your aspirations? What are you looking forward to in the near or the distant future?
Oh my God, so many things. Well, for starters, like I mentioned, all the music stuff. I have new music coming out, and I'll be playing more live shows in 2022.
That's
Corona permitting,
amazing.
of course. So those are two things to really look. Oh wow, my throat is just not happy right now. Uh, those are a couple of things to really look forward to. But beyond that, I'm working on this animated feature right now. It's based on this book series, Young Captain Nemo, and we're working on
Yeah.
an animated project based on that, and that has been so much fun.
Okay.
I've been able to work with screenwriters who are so good at their stuff. I've been able to work with animators who are just mind blowing in terms of how they approach the design, and so it's been very exciting for me to actually be able to work on a full kind of feature production kind of thing. And so fingers crossed that one's coming out soon. I don't know when it'll be releasing or anything along those lines. And then, also I'm working on like a live action show, which I'm not allowed to talk about, so that's all I can say about it. But like, between my job as like whether it's an animation producer or a live action producer or something, um, or my music job, which is a completely different side of my brain, I'm very excited for 2022, 2023 and beyond because I mean, I'm hoping that the years get even more exciting. I think that Corona has stolen so much time from all of us, and
Yeah.
I'm trying to do my best to take advantage of the fact that things are opening up and things are getting a little bit more, uh, I guess, free. That's the
Yeah.
best way to put it.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing and more power to you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Final question.
All right.
What is a piece of advice you'd like to share, or even just a learning? It could be personal, professional, creative, anything, something you've learned and you wish people were more aware of.
Um, well, I think if there's anything I can say, given what we've talked about today, it's that my passions have always been something that for me I kept coming back to and kept leaning on, whether things were
Hmm.
difficult or not difficult. And the best thing I can say that's helped me is find ways to love it even when it's a process,
Hmm.
I say this a lot when people ask me for advice, practice, 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 cuz I mean,
Yeah.
I practice singing like 60 to 90 minutes a day depending on how intensive it is, and then like I have to practice, songwriting and all of that by just constantly doing it. Practice
Right.
makes perfect, but for me, what has always helped me when it comes to that aspect of it is kind of thinking about how everything I'm doing is building up towards certain goals. I mentioned I'm
Right.
very ambitious, but I'm also very meticulous in how I do things, and I always kind of think about everything as one step at a time, with like the larger goal always in the back of my head. And for me, finding the balance between that mindset has always helped me a lot. Thinking about, I have this really big goal that I'm aiming towards, but these small incremental goals are the ones that'll get me there.
Right.
It helps me kind of keep myself grounded and also not get intimidated by the idea of aspiring to do a crazy concept album or do a feature film in animation with a completely different style of animation or so on. All of
Hmm.
those things seem so intimidating at first, but when I kind of break it up into little parts and work backwards, that always helps me kind of think it through. And then, yeah, I mean, it goes without saying, like, keep doing it. Like,
Yeah.
practice practice is really important, and especially like deliberate practice where you're actually thinking about what you're practicing and why you're practicing it. That for me is the best piece of advice I could give anyone, because I mean, it's the only way I can do this stuff. I'm not, a natural born, like, I just rolled out of bed and started singing and stuff like that. Like, it took me so much time and effort to figure out how to get my voice to work, and I'm still working on it. So, yeah, I mean, practice is like, it's the most default basic advice to give, but
Yeah.
there's a reason why, you know?
Yeah. No, that's amazing. And I think that's very practical advice to give as well. Because, yeah, I mean, you don't become like a maestro overnight.
Mm-mm.
It takes baby steps. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's amazing advice. And yeah, with that, we've come to the end of this interview. Thank you so much for
Mm-hmm.
being here, Sahil. Really
Thank you
enjoyed
so
this
much for having me.
conversation. Really
Yeah,
enjoyed this
likewise.
conversation. Yeah, and I hope listeners don't get too bored with our anime conversations. But hey, the fans might enjoy it. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that should be good. But yeah, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
So that was my conversation with Sahil Bhargav. I had a lot of fun recording this and especially enjoyed our conversation about all things anime. You should definitely check out the recommendations. Closing this episode with Sahil talking about his song Mama from his EP Ronin. I hope you enjoyed the show, and I'll see you next week with a new guest and a new chronicle to share. Talk soon!
So these are the lyrics to my song Mama, which was on my EP that came out last August. The EP is titled Ronin. Huh. A faint, shimmering light, the ray renders me blind, confined all through my life, the truth I can't unsee. The glory of daylight awaits me. I'm running, I'm climbing, I'm soaring up high, the summit approaching, my freedom in sight. I'm leaving my demons and shedding this life, a new world to dream. The chasm of fear will not break me. The walls bearing me down, my light simmering out. As I falter and drown, I sink into sleep. The chasm of freedom forsakes me. I'm silent, I'm screaming, I struggle to cry. But life is not giving, I'm losing my mind. I'll give in, conforming, and I will survive, long and inside. The glory of fear will erase me. Am I happy now? The demon is me. Am I happy now? My victims are me. Am I happy now? The secret stays unknown. Now you are yearning to flee. Your soul's tainted by fear, but I must keep you near. It's you or it's me. The chasm of freedom you'll never see. I'm chasing, I'm losing, I'm falling behind. You burnt down your demons and never looked back. I'm hoping, I'm praying you will find the light. Realize your dream. The glory of moonlight is yours to feel. The glory of freedom, a mother's dream. So, Mama was inspired by the anime Promised Neverland, at least season 1 of it. And it's inspired by Isabella's story. And so I essentially put myself in her shoes and imagined myself to be in that situation, living in this horrific, oppressive, and hostile environment. And that was, the character in Mama is placed in an environment just like that, where she feels like she's been completely confined and just unable to be herself. And so she tries to escape, but as she tries to escape, she quickly realizes that doing so would probably cause her to lose her life. And so she eventually, after a lot of time, gives in and conforms and becomes just like the people that were oppressing her, eventually becoming the very monster that she hated. The demon is me. And time passes and she continues to, exist in this state until finally she becomes a mother and she has kids of her own. And she realizes that her kids, just like she was when she was a kid, are, trying to escape. They're trying to get out of this environment. And at first she fights it. She doesn't want her kids to leave her. She doesn't want her kids to potentially, get killed. But unlike her, they're able to work together and they're actually able to, burn down their demons, so to speak, and escape. And at first she's sad knowing that she'll never see her kids again. She's devastated, but a part of her realizes that she's proud of them and she's happy for them, that they'll be able to finally follow their dreams and live their lives in a way that she never was. They'll be able to basically live out her dreams, or at least she'll be living vicariously through their dreams. Yeah, I mean, that's the entire story of Mama, and I find it amazing because people who've listened to this song have, found it extremely relatable in lots of different ways and lots of different interpretations that even I didn't think of. And so I hope more people listen to the song and love it, and hopefully come see me play it live soon, which would be amazing. So thank you.